What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ podcast for UFC Paris. I am Jason Floyd. Of course, as you see, I am solo this week as sending healing vibes out to my guy, Pete Rogers Jr., going through a little bit of a sickness here. So that's why Pete is not going to be here. But I do have Pete's fight picks. I'll let you know who he's going to like here. So a little bit of an abbreviated version here of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, if you got any questions, you can line that up right now in the chats. I'll be answering those questions. We're going to talk a little bit about game theory in terms of this fight card and other things, what I like over on Prize Picks. So if you got any questions, be sure to line that up in the chat as well. As we here for a little bit of abbreviated version. Might be here 20, 30 minutes. Who knows? We'll see how long I go here, but I do know we got some questions already in the queue over on Discord. So we'll talk about that over there. In terms of, looking at game theory for UFC Paris, and when I look at this UFC Paris card, to me, you've got four intriguing matchups that it's like a UFC main card. However, the rest of the card, it's kind of like a Cage Warriors regional show. I mean, let's just be clear with what it is here. And I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of underdogs I really like on this card, and I can say the same thing for Pete because Pete did text me his picks. So I'll let you know about what Pete's picks are there. Of course, you look at the main event of Gane and Spivak. I think in terms of building your GPP lineups, that is going to be a key fight to build your lineups around. I also think another key fight is that Bogdan and 𝗕𝗂𝗄 fight. That to me is going to be another key matchup in terms of what you're putting out there in terms of your GPP lineups. Like I said, if you got any questions, line those up in chat. I got the chat already up here on YouTube, so appreciate everyone turning in. Of course, I was trying to get the show done a little earlier today, but your boy's doing a little bit of back pain here, so it was a little bit of a rough morning here. Got to go see the doctor here to try to get me fixed up, so I'm ready to watch these fights here tomorrow afternoon. And of course, Dat Dude, appreciate you checking in here. Anthony, appreciate you checking in. Of course, if you got any questions, line those up right now. If you want to send a super chat, always do appreciate that. Of course, Pete will be back next week. As of course, we got the pay-per-view next week of Izzy and Sean Strickland. So let's get right in talking a little bit about game theory. Kind of mentioned it, game theory here. There's some fights that I really look at and I say in terms of GPPs, you got to really look at. And to me, main event is one of those. It's a very easy fight to break down. I mean, we don't kind of really go into how to break this fight down. Clearly, we know how this fight's going to go down. If Gane's going to win this matchup, it's because he's able to keep the fight on the feet. If Sergey Spivak is able to do this, it's because of utilizing those takedowns. We've seen him in his last three fights, a 3-fight winning streak, 15 takedowns for Sergey Spivak. That's the clear method to victory here. And, of course, we all know what the major weakness of Ciryl Gane is. We saw what Francis Gane was able to do to him. Also, we're able to see what John Jones was able to do to him. And, of course, John Jones, a lot of people would say is the GOAT. So, clear breakdown. So, to me, in terms of GPPs, even on cash games, to me, Gane and Spivak is when you're developing your lineups, whether you're building multi-lineups or you're developing a single entry lineup, a cash lineup, GPP, whatever it may be. To me, the main event is one that you gotta prioritize in this one. Co-main event is not a fight I'm prioritizing at all. It really doesn't not matter in any type of format. Just a fight that I really do not love to get to, but I understand that maybe if you want to play a little bit of the ownership game there, looking at the ownership figures on that one, I kind of understand that one. Benoit Saint-Denis, Thiago Moses is a fight that I do want to get to a little bit there. I mean, I think Benoit Saint-Denis is a rightful side to go in there, so we'll talk about a little bit of that. I mentioned about the 𝗕𝗂𝗄 and Bogdan. Bogdan making his UFC debut, and he is a guy that he's a quick finisher, but one of the things when you start kind of doing that deep dive on him, the thing that really kind of stuck out to me about him was more about, kind of that strength of schedule. And that's something that on the regional scene, you're never really quite sure how to take that. Could it be a situation where, they were being very strategic in terms of, how they were matching him? Could he not get the right fights? But he is a finisher. I mean, he's a guy that finishes early. Volkan is, I said this on my podcast the other day, yesterday when I was doing the MMA Report podcast, my guy Daniel. And I said, Volkan is a guy that's fought everyone. I mean, you look at his losses at the top of this division, but, there was a time where Ozdemir was really looked at as a finisher. We just haven't seen that from him. And I think that's why you see, like, when I look over at Prize Picks, that fight time was 7 minutes, which is I will tell you this, as I look down here at my spreadsheet, there actually is a fair amount of stuff that I do like over at Prize Picks over there as well. But then, like, there's other, fights on this card. Like, I don't love how big of a favorite that William Gomez is. I'm just being honest. I don't really love it. I think that if you're looking to take an underdog spot, that's probably going to be one of the underdogs you look at in terms of there. Also, and I know my guy Pete wanted me to mention this here, the Loughlin and Lapilus fight is, of course, this is a fight that came together this week. We had some shakeups this fight card. And so when you go on your DraftKings and you look at the salaries on this one, it's really going to stick out to you. The fact that Taylor's 8,600 and Loughlin is 9,300. So that could be a fight that you could potentially attack here today in terms of, or attack tomorrow in terms of your lineups there for UFC Paris as well. But, outside of that, I'll say this, Jocelyn Edwards, I think is a one that I more like as a prize picks play than a GPP play as well. Bosserot's another one that does stick out to me as well, even though he's a big favorite. Look, if you want to pay up for Jacqueline, go there. So, but to me, as I'm developing GPP lines, it starts with the main event of Gane Spivak. Then I'm looking at that Ozdemir and Bohan fight. Those are the two fights that I'm really going to be targeting in terms of GPPs. Now, when you talk about the main event of Ciryl Gane and Sergey Spivak, of course, Gane 8,700 on DK, $21 on FanDuel. Spivak 7,500 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Sergey Spivak, as we currently do the show, is a minus 175 betting favorite, plus 150 for Sergey Spivak. And, it's interesting, just kind of, looking at some various things on this matchup. I mean, look, as I mentioned a little while ago, this is not a hard fight to break down. It's very simple to break down. You got a striker going up against a guy that, quite frankly, needs to lace up his wrestling shoes. Sergey Spivak cannot let his ego potentially get the best of him and say, hey, let me go out there and defeat the kickboxer here. And of course, we've seen the weakness in we've seen the weakness in Ciryl Gane in the Francis Ngannou fight and the John Jones fight. And I mean, if you're Sergey Spivak, the mentality has to be take this one to the ground. I have question marks when it comes to the chin of Sergey Spivak. That's why, to me, if you're playing, whether you're playing 10 lives, 20 lives, 50 lives, 150 lives, whatever that number may be, to me, you want to get to both sides of this one because obviously there's a clear advantage for both of these guys in this matchup. If Sergey Spivak gets this one to the ground, I think he's going to win. I favor Ciryl Gane in this matchup. I just think he hits that chin. And that's why I like when I look over at Prize Picks. I got to be honest with you, I really like the under 11 fight time minutes on Ciryl Gane. That's probably the one that sticks out to me the most in terms of if I was going to attack any of them over Prize Picks. And if I was going to attack another one on Ciryl Gane, it would probably be going more than a 95.5 fantasy score. But to me, if you're developing a card, and I've talked about this plenty of times on this show, is when you're developing those lineup cards over at Prize Picks, I more like to play 2 and 3 player cards as opposed to going after that 5 player card just because in MMA it's just tough. I just think 2-3 lineups. So I think if you're going to attack the main event on Prize Picks, to me it's about going less than 11 fight time minutes for Ciryl Gane. But I mean, look, it's a question mark with Ciryl Gane. Can he keep this fight on the feet? Because Spivak, most likely we're going to take this one to the ground. But I do favor Ciryl Gane. Also, my guy Pete does favor Ciryl Gane as well. I'll let you know. Let me pull up the text message I got from Pete just so I have all of his right fights here. So Pete's picks for this one, he's going with Ciryl Gane, Minafi Saint Denis, Ozdemir, Giannis, Morgan, Taylor, Lusa, Jocelyn, Bosserot, and Jacqueline are his picks. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of agree with every one of his picks, in terms of this one. Co-main event, you got Rose Namajunas returning after a year away from, of course, that awful title fight she had there against Carla Esparza and moving up to 125 pounds. And that, to me, is the interesting part about this because I never viewed Rose as a big 115-pound fighter. And so to me, if Rose is going to go out there as an underdog, she's a plus 160 betting underdog, 7,300 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Fiorot minus 190. She's 8,900 on DK, $19 on FanDuel. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's not really a fight that I really want to attack in terms of GPPs. If you sit there, ownership is not bad. Maybe if you're looking for a really leverage spot over on FanDuel, if you maybe look at if you think that one of these fighters go out there and get a stoppage, I think this fight goes 15 minutes. So I really don't like putting either one of these fighters in terms of that MVP spot. But I understand if maybe you do want to put them in MVP spot, that's just certainly not a route I would go. For Rose Namajunas, I think can she get this? Will she utilize her grappling? I mean, obviously, Fiorot has a good defensive submission game, so I don't see her submitting her. I think Fiorot is the right way to go here. But to me, if Rose is going to pull it off, it is going to be her utilized grappling, probably win like a 29-28 scorecard here. But to me, the pick is going with the favorite here. But in terms of GPP, it's just not a fight I really love. A little small amount of leverage in terms of this one, but overall, a fight that in terms of GPPs, I want to kind of have a small stake in. Then you got lightweight matchup between Beneil Saint-Denis and Thiago Moses. Thiago Moses, of course, a UFC veteran. He's a plus 135 betting favorite. Saint-Denis minus 160. Saint-Denis 8,500 DK, $16 on FanDuel, and Moses is 7,700 DK. $14 on FanDuel. Obviously, you gotta love where Thiago trains out of. And Saint-Denis, it's a guy that I've kind of been down on a little bit, and he's another guy I do like. I will say this over on Prize Picks. I do like that over 44.5 significant strikes, just because I think this is a fight that probably, if we do see a finish in this one, I would say late second, early third round. I don't see this fight ending in the first round, so that's why I would be looking to potentially attack that over 44.5 significant strikes over there on Prize Picks. I can see where Thiago might try to utilize some grappling in this one. Earlier in the week, there was a much better number on Saint-Denis takedown props at 1.5. I did like the more there. Now at 2, I don't really love that over at Prize Picks, but I do feel like this is a nice step up in competition for Saint-Denis here, and I do think that he is going to get the job done. I mentioned about that Ozdemir and Guscov fight. Bogdan, making his UFC debut, the thing that sticks out to you is his strength of competition on the regional scene, but he's a finisher. That's why, to me, in terms of GPPs, I think this is a fight that you do have to target, even though, look, we've seen Ozdemir become a little bit of a decision machine over the a little while here. But to me, and I will tell you this, man, if you're looking for someone underneath 20% ownership, Bogdan is one that definitely does stick out to me over there. I'll tell you some other spots that I do like here. By the way, I do like the under 7 fight time minutes on the Ozdemir fight. Other thing on Prize Picks that I do like is I do like the more than 57.5 significant strikes on Taylor Lapilus. I like the over 1.5 takedowns on Lucy. I like the over 67.5 significant strikes on Jocelyn Edwards as well. So that's really what I like over there on Prize Picks. I will say this, Jocelyn Edwards, I think that's a fight that probably goes the distance in terms of that one. So, but if you've got any questions on some of these other fights that are part of prelims, hit those up in the chat and I will answer those. I do want to go over to scores to some of the questions that have come in here over the past couple of days. So if you got any questions, you hit those up in the YouTube chat right now. I'll answer those questions. Which Frenchman is most likely to get a controversial win by decision? There's a couple options there as you look at it. I can very well see a couple options going in there. But the one thing, and this is a thing I always talk about, is when you're talking about controversial decisions. The UFC is bringing these judges, so I don't, I can see where you put it there. Maybe it is like someone like a Taylor Lapilus, maybe someone like him in terms of there. Also, a comment says, Gane is going to be too busy worrying about takedowns and laying anything good. Polar Bear is going to eat him up. Look, clearly you would hope that the mentality in this training camp has been, hey, let's try to, get this, keep this fight on the feet. And, that's really been a big question mark with Gane. And this is, in a way, I think this is pretty much kind of like it's a make or break fight for Ciryl Gane, because, if he gets taken down at ease, like we've seen happen against Francis and also against John Jones, I don't know what the future is for him at heavyweight, because I just think that there's going to be a lot of bad matchups for him. So we'll see what happens there. Neil saying Saint-Denis over 80.5 fantasy points on Prize Picks. He almost gets there in a win. I would agree with that, and I would expect that number probably goes up here. Tristan says, who is the best leverage play? Best leverage play as I kind of look right now, I would say, I think you got to look at 2. You got to book Bogdan, who's got nice ownership. I would also look at Thiago Moses. Could he utilize a grappling game to maybe seal away a decision victory there? Those would probably be the 2 that I would really look at. In terms of a fight that maybe is not getting a lot of ownership, you look at the co-main event. That's the one you look at, but I really just don't love that matchup there in terms of a fantasy score upside. When you're trying to get, 650 points, I just don't know if the winner gets to 100 in that matchup. Let's see here. Rank the best takedown upside. So looking at some of the takedowns, Beneil Saint-Denis, I think, is an interesting one. Obviously, Sergey Spivak is someone to look at there. Other ones that I would look at, 𝗙𝐭 against McKee, I think that is one to look at there. 𝗕𝗏𝗏 is another one I would look at there. Ranking the 9K options here. So to me, so we've got, I would say this, I like Jacqueline. 9,400 is a big price tag. I would probably put her number 1. Number 2, I would go with 𝗕𝗏𝗏. And then 3, I would go Morgan, and 4, I go Loughlin. I like Taylor Lapis in that fight. That's why I would put him in terms of that one. Of course, if you got any questions, hit me up in the chat. I'll be able to get to you there in terms of it. I was asked about the Morgan and Manalo fight. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's got decision written all over it. I like Morgan in that spot. I understand to potentially take the underdog there, but to me, I mean, look, I think that's a decision fight. I would say this right now. I look at a lot of these fights, and I think we could potentially have a lot of decisions in terms of that. In terms of this one, I mean, there's certain fights that I definitely see finishing inside the distance. To me, the fights I really like inside the distance, Gane, Spivak, Ozdemir, Bogdan would be another one that I would look at. The McKee fight, I think, is another one I look at as potentially inside the distance. 𝗕𝗏𝗏, I think, to me, is another one that I would look at going inside the distance. What underdogs are you playing on DK? Look, if you're, I want to get the Sergey Spivak, as a multi-entry player, just because of the takedown upside, but understanding it's a potential boom bust play because he could. I'm not huge on his chin, and I think he could very easily get finished with strikes if he can't get the fight to the ground. But to me, he's one of the underdogs that I look at. I mentioned about Bogdan. I mean, he's just a finisher, but as I've said countless times now, is the strength of competition that does kind of concern me when you're talking about now he's coming into the UFC. You're taking on essentially a gatekeeper. I mean, let's just call Ozdemir what he is at this point. He's a gatekeeper, but he's fought the best of the best in this division. So it's kind of a litmus test for a guy coming in. I mean, this is one of those fight bookings that you see and you look at it and say, okay, Mick Maynard, who handles the light heavyweight division, I look at this and say, okay, is he looking at, you got a new guy coming into the UFC debut, put him up against a veteran, and you're kind of hoping for him to shine against a veteran. So to me, he's another underdog I would look at. I'm not big on William Gomez, so Giannis at 6,900 definitely is someone to pay attention to as a underdog. I mean, Taylor Lapis is quote-unquote underdog in terms of the DraftKings odds, even though he's a favorite in the matchup. Of course, it's a matchup that, they both lost their opponents to come together here. So that one is kind of one that I want to pay attention to where ownership goes in terms of that one. Outside of that, I don't really love anything else in terms of underdogs. I do like Jocelyn Edwards at 8,300 as a cash game play. I don't mind at $15. I mean, just kind of look at FanDuel. I know we don't get a ton of questions about FanDuel, but as I look at FanDuel, Ciryl Gane, $21 is someone, I mean, obviously he's going to be a major captain play over there. I might look more putting him maybe potentially in a utility role as opposed to a captain play over there. Obviously, a lot of leverage on the co-main event if you want to put the co-main event in the leverage spot there. I mean, Rose Namajunas at $12. It's, if you're looking to conserve some salary over on FanDuel, I mean, Rose at $12 is someone that certainly sticks out to me. Bogdan, $11 sticks out to me. Giannis at $10. You got to like the value there. Taylor Lapis at $15. I think that's another good value play over there in terms of FanDuel. And that's kind of what I like over there at FanDuel. But, just kind of looking at some of the ownership, I think it's really, kind of staying away from some of those high-end options to maybe find yourself a little bit of leverage over there on the FanDuel side of the equation. Like I said, over at Prize Picks, here's what I really like on Prize Picks. I like the less than 11-minute fight time minutes on Ciryl Gane. I like the more than 44.5 significant strikes on Saint Denis. I like the under 7 fight time minutes on Ozdemir. I like the more than 57.5 significant strikes on Lapis. I like the over 1.5 takedowns on 𝗙𝐭. And I like the over 67.5 significant strikes for Jocelyn Edwards. And as I mentioned, I'll kind of go through the picks that Pete has sent me for his picks, which he is pretty much picking everyone that I'm like. So we really don't have any difference here. Gane, Fiorot, Saint Denis, Ozdemir, Giannis, Morgan, Taylor, 𝗙𝐭, Edwards, Bosserat, and Jacqueline. So that's kind of what we like there. And the other point that Pete wanted me to mention was, it says how he had one fight with a 9.3K fighter versus an 8.6K fighter. Probably massive leverage on the 9.3K fighter, even though Pete says he does like Lapilus, and that is something. And I talk about that every week as you're developing lineups, and if you're getting in one of these big GPP lineups and sitting there and looking at where the potential leverage spots is, where you could go to find that leverage. So I'll kind of go through the score chat. If you got anything else before I get out of here, if any other questions about UFC Paris, not a fight card that, I'll be honest with you, that I really love. It's just something that I'm not huge on here. Value plays underneath 8K on DraftKings. So, obviously you look right at the top, Sergey Spivak at 7,500. We all know the takedown upside that is sitting there with him. I look at 𝗕𝐬𝐬𝐳 Moses, even though I think it probably is a decision. So I don't know if you get that high score that you're looking for. I mentioned about Bohan, 7,500. To me, he's one to sit there and look at. Those really be the ones that really stick out to me as some value plays over there. And look, and I'll say this, and I know there's been some comments in chat about this of, potentially that quick finish bonus being live for Ciryl Gane. Yeah, it would not surprise me. It definitely would not surprise me if he goes out there and he gets that quick finish, because he very easily could in terms of this one. But Sergey's got that takedown upside. I mean, as I mentioned, he's got 15 takedowns in his last 3 fights. Obviously the strength competition is not what Ciryl Gane is in terms of this one. But, the big question mark is, can Ciryl stop the takedown? And I don't know what that is. Of course, if you got any questions, you can hit those up in the YouTube chat. Also, be sure to join our Discord channel. Totally free to join. Great community we have over there. Of course, we also have our DraftKings contest. That's in the show notes below, so you can check that out. Join that competition over there, and appreciate everyone who checks out every week. Of course, Pete will be rejoining me next week. We'll get you ready for UFC 293. Of course, that'll be the Strickland and Adesanya fight card. So appreciate everyone tuning in for this abbreviated version of the Fight HQ podcast, and I will be back next week as it will be myself and Pete the Heat breaking down UFC 293.